From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good Sunday morning. The latest filings ahead of suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's impeachment trial include accusations of a fake Uber account, burner phones, and secret emails. More on that in just a minute, but first, let's get to the three things you need to know in Texas politics. A Texas judge listened to arguments about the constitutionality of Senate Bill 14 on Tuesday and Wednesday. The law banning medical care for transgender youth is set to go into effect September 1st. 5 Texas families with trans children ages 9 to 16 are suing, saying the law is unconstitutional and violates a parent's right to provide for the care and well-being of their children. Advocates for the law say giving children treatments, including puberty blockers and hormone therapies, can have adverse effects long term. The plaintiffs are asking the judge to block the law before it goes into effect. The state of Texas and city of Austin are teaming up to get into the Austin housing market. On Tuesday, Land Commissioner Don Buckingham and Mayor Kurt Watson announced plans to turn the Hobby Building downtown into workforce housing. In addition to giving teachers, police officers, firefighters, government and healthcare workers a place to live, the renovation will also include retail space, parking, and childcare. Interested companies have 90 days to submit proposals to the state. Governor Greg Abbott joined UT leaders to announce plans to bring a state-of-the-art cancer research hospital to Austin. The MD Anderson Cancer Center will be one of 2 hospital towers replacing the Frank Irwin Center. The UT MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston is ranked #1 for cancer care in the country. Tuesday was the deadline for the House prosecutors to respond to motions filed by suspended Attorney General Ken Paxton's attorneys ahead of his impeachment trial. The responses are filled with details of new accusations, from the warnings Paxton received to stay away from Nate Paul to claims of a burner phone, fake Uber account, and secret email. Lauren McGaughy, investigative reporter for the Dallas Morning News, joined me to break it all down. You know, the House managers responded this week to all of those motions that came from Paxton's attorneys. Tell us a little bit about what they said.
Well, they filed a slew of motions. Lots of documents came out this week, and they basically rejected everything that Paxton's legal team is putting forth. Paxton is trying to have all of the impeachment articles thrown out just in their entirety, and he also is arguing that no evidence before this year should be heard, that certain statements should be inadmissible, and that he shouldn't have to take the stand and testify on his behalf. The House managers say none of that's true. They rejected all of it summarily. And then now we have 4,000 pages of supporting documentation to all of the arguments that they're making in those filings.
Yes, a lot. There is a lot to comb through.
Yes.
Let's take a step back. One of the main arguments that Paxton's attorneys are making about why he should not have to go through this impeachment trial is because they argue, well, all of those things happened prior to the most recent election. Voters knew about them and they elected him anyway.
Right.
The House managers strongly disagree with that logic.
That's right. They said no dice on that. The House managers cited some legal precedent that they said doesn't back up Paxton's arguments on that front. But they also made this argument that Paxton is both saying that the voters reelected him knowing all of these things, but also worked to cover up information from the public that would have been important for them to know during last year's election. So they made a pretty hearty argument against that, which is one of Paxton's key arguments in throwing out the impeachment articles.
Right. And let's talk about the cover-up, because the details that the House managers are giving us are just, there's no other way to say it but juicy. It's just juicy details.
These are pretty salacious filings for sure. We got thousands of pages of interview transcripts with key witnesses, text messages, emails, Uber receipts. One of the allegations against Paxton is that he was having an affair with an extramarital affair with a woman that worked for Nate Paul. And this week, in some of these documents, the House managers released Uber ride-sharing receipts under an alias name that apparently Nate Paul created an account for Paxton that allowed him to ferry himself back and forth to see this woman, allegedly. So a lot going on there, and a lot that deals not just with Paxton's professional life and his job as Attorney General, but also his marriage and his personal life.
They talk a lot about also how they say misused the office to try to help and benefit Nate Paul, a friend and political donor.
That's right.
What really stood out to you so far in the exhibits that the House gave us about that?
So there were a number of interviews with top staff at the time who were subsequently fired or let go when they reported Paxton to the FBI. And according to their retelling, they said that Paxton is under his own cloud of legal troubles. He's been investigated for securities fraud. He has an FBI investigation as well, and that he felt some camaraderie with Nate Paul, who had been raided by the FBI. And so that kind of brought them together, and they believe spurred Paxton's interest in trying to help Paul. What they didn't like was that they alleged that Paxton then misused his power, used the agency in an inappropriate way to try to help Paul investigate FBI officers, Texas Rangers, and other people that he was under scrutiny with. And so it was just a real uncomfortable situation for the staff and for the agency, and it led to really all of this blowing up now 3 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly is interesting. There's comments, text messages that we see where his senior staff were telling him, stay away from Nate Paul. Don't trust Nate Paul.
That's right. Yeah, they called him a crook. They called Nate Paul a crook. They called him a con man. There are emails back and forth from staff to Paxton urging him to cut ties. They had personal meetings with Paxton urging him to cut ties. And at times, the staff actually thought that Paxton was going to leave everything alone and walk away. And then they would find out that Paxton had done something else internally at the agency to help Paul in their retelling. So after a number of months of this, these top-level staffers decided to report their own boss to the FBI for alleged bribery and corruption. And we're starting to see some of the details and all the connective tissue to what led to that decision in all of these new exhibits.
This entire time, Tony Busby, who's representing Ken Paxton, has said there's no evidence. There's no evidence of a bribe here. There's nothing to show a bribe.
So that's going to be something the House impeachment lawyers will argue.
Right.
There is a document in this new tranche that shows a text message Paxton sent ordering his blind trustee to pay a builder $121,000, and this builder had links to Nate Paul. That payment came the same day that Paxton's top deputies reported him to the FBI. And the House impeachment managers say this shows that the work done on Paxton's kitchen remodel was done for free initially, and then when Paxton knew that he was going to be reported for alleged bribery, he tried to create a payment that, provided some evidence that he did in fact pay for it. And so I think this is all going to come down to the managers being able to prove a quid pro quo. They have to be able to show Paxton was giving something to Paul with the express understanding that he would get something back, that there was this symbiotic relationship. So we're really going to have to see how they put that argument on trial.
And that I think will be interesting because obviously Paxton is a smart guy. And so if you're looking for if you do this, I will do that text message or conversation, proof of conversation, that's going to be something that's hard to find, obviously. Right.
A lot of the conversation is going to be, in the trial, I think, is going to be where does the line between constituent relations end and bribery begin? Elected officials like the senators that are going to be on the jury, they do favors. Their job is to help their constituents on a daily basis, right? So how do you define a quid pro quo versus helping someone out that you have a personal and professional relationship and using your power to do it? They're really going to have to lean in on that this was corruption, that he was trying to cover it up, hide it, it was unethical, and that he was doing so at the against the express advice of some of his top lieutenants in his agency. So I'm really interested to see how they make that argument click, especially to a group of other elected officials who, probably are faced with some of these ethical challenges themselves too.
The House managers concluded one of their filings writing, quote, Paxton can run, but he cannot hide, end quote. Now, Paxton's attorneys released a statement referring to the impeachment as, quote, nothing but a sham, slamming the House managers for not providing evidence that Paxton took a bribe. Tony Busby wrote, quote, it is imperative now for the Senate to understand if there is no bribe, there was no whistle to blow, end quote. Paxton's impeachment trial starts September 5th. That's Texas This Week.